Welcome to the Nate and Dorin podcast. We're professional videographers based in Vancouver, Canada, and we are here to talk about relevant topics within the video and media industry. I'm Nate, and I run Nate Dixon Media.
And I am Dorin, the videographer, solo entrepreneur offering video production services. And today we're going to talk about what tips and tricks we often use on our projects. We haven't really talked about this, and we got all the way to episode 20. So let's talk about, what do you use when you're filming? What tips and tricks that improve your workflow, your quality, that make the process faster? Filming, editing, organizing stuff. Let's talk about all of these. So Nate, why don't you start us off with one technique, like a tip or trick that you use when you're filming something?
Well, Dorin, an often overlooked tip is to try and get a good night's sleep the day before you're filming. That is something that I'm definitely guilty of not doing sometimes, staying up late the night before editing, or
Doing
just like
podcasts
doing podcasts late at
at
night.
11 p.m. Yeah.
It's setting you off on the wrong foot from the start. So if you can avoid it, try and avoid staying up too late the night before, and then drink a ton of water the day that you're filming. You might need to go pee more often, but when you're more hydrated, it's just like everything on your body's firing on more cylinders, your brain, your muscles, everything. So, that's my first tip for you.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I've had filming days where the schedule was so tight and there were no bathroom breaks for like 3 hours. And yeah, it's just brutal because you choose to dehydrate and it's a horrible feeling if it's a long project. Um, One thing that I think is kind of overlooked or maybe a beginner wouldn't be too aware of is field of view. So like if you're all the way zoomed out on your kit lens at 24 millimeters, you'll get more wide of a field of view. You'll see stuff more to the left and right from that viewpoint. But if you zoom into like 70 millimeters or 75, whatever your lens goes to, then you obviously have to move the camera farther back to capture the same subject, but everything's narrowed down. So I feel like playing around with that and familiarizing yourself with those different looks at those different focal lengths can help you get a specific look for your project. So let's say for a very very dramatic, like a documentary or an interview where we're really focused on the subject that's talking, on the talent on screen, you might want to push the camera back and zoom in a little bit more to get that tighter shot, the tighter field of view. But maybe you're filming someone that's giving like a tour of a facility or something, then you might want to be wider at 24 mil so you can get them, but you can also get what they're pointing to and what they're referring to.
Yeah, that is a really good tip, Doran. And you know what's kind of tied into that is depth of field. So typically, the more you zoom in, the more depth of field you get naturally from the optics. But that's also something that you can kind of control a bit, and depending on the zoom level, the field of view. And you might use it for the same sort of reasons. You might want to try and isolate that subject, blur out any distracting elements in the background. Maybe you have to just quickly set up and you can't like stage the background. You might just want to crank that f-stop down, make sure that the talent's in focus, and everything else you don't really have to worry about. Or if you're trying to include more in the scene, more like a real estate tour kind of video like you're saying, you might want to shoot at a time of day when there's more natural light so that you can crank the f-stop up a bit to keep everything more in focus. That way you don't need to worry about people coming to and from the lens so that you can get everything in focus. You don't need to worry about pulling focus or anything like that.
Yeah. Actually, It's slipping my mind right now, but there's a few movies that employ this technique that you're talking about. It's actually like a very cool cinematic technique of like you see the subject in the frame, the talent, and they just receive like dramatic news or something happens, and they start off the shot at like f22, like you can see everything. It looks very like kind of like found footage camcorder, like phone footage or whatever. um but then instead of doing like a dolly or a zoom shot, they instead just like flip the aperture all the way up, which is confusing because it goes to a lower number, but basically, you know what I mean, right? So they'll go
Yeah.
down to f1.8, and the blur, the depth of field will come into the same shot. Have you seen that technique?
No, that
Oh,
sounds great.
there's a name for it. I can't remember, but there's a few movies like recently in the last like 3 4 years that have employed it, and I remember watching like a YouTube bit on it, and I was like, yeah, that's really clever.
Hmm.
I remember even seeing Philip Bloom. He made a video playing around with it, and he made reference to those movies too.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's actually really cool. It would be really hard to do on, I think, by yourself. Like you need to have like, because you have to compensate for exposure and all that stuff because of the aperture change.
Yeah.
So you need like a dedicated film crew. Then everyone's like doing this thing on a camera. But on a more basic level, like you said, yeah, depth of field for a simple shot could be a very artistic, purposeful choice.
Yeesh. Another tip with filming is if you're filming somebody who's not like a professional actor or actress, which can happen a lot.
Hmm.
One thing I've noticed is if they're getting a little bit nervous, or you can just sense their nervousness, or they're having trouble reading the teleprompter if you've got a teleprompter.
Hmm.
Um, One thing that can kind of help relax them is you just kind of back away, maybe kind of hide behind the camera,
Hmm.
and you just kind of look only at the screen or look off to the side. And what that can kind of do is make the person a little less nervous. They don't feel that pair
Hmm.
of eyes on them. If you can kind of just hide yourself behind the tripod, that's what I like to do. And I just kind
Hmm.
of look away, or I can still like look up and see the screen. And yeah, just kind of relax yourself, have relaxed body language. Don't be like anxiously leaning forward,
Yeah,
like staring at
shaking
them,
your head.
like, oh, great, throwing up your
Looking at the
hands.
time like, oh, when is this over?
Yeah, and that
Uh,
can really help relax people. And I've been told
mm,
by a few clients that they're like, "Oh, you just really made me feel really relaxed, and that helped me kind of bring out my best performance." And I'm not a professional by any means. And I was like, "Oh, that's great. That's what that's my goal. The product, the video turns out better, and they feel better filming it. And it's not like a traumatic experience where you're like,
yeah,
action, go, take two, take three, and you're just like, that could really turn
yeah.
them off from working with you."
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. I have had a few though that because it's just them and this inanimate object that's staring at them, they like lock up. And sometimes you just gotta like switch it to an interview style. Like, okay, look off camera, and let's get a person in here that you can have eye contact with that'll make you
Hmm.
respond in a natural way. So sometimes teleprompter just doesn't work. It's different personalities, different ways of conveying the message. But yeah, definitely that's a good one to keep in mind. That they're stressed about being filmed. Maybe they've never been filmed before. Yeah,
That they know of.
I haven't given much thought on how to relax them.
Mm.
Um, so maybe I should think about that more. Yeah, good tip, Nate. Um, I think to end off filming wise, one tip that I think I learned it all the way from BCIT when we did the media video course. More footage is better. So, like, if you have 4 hours to film the thing and you have a shot list and you got all your shots in like 3 hours, you know what? Just get a second take, get a different angle, like film a little bit more if you have the time for it and the space on your card. Because who knows, in editing, in post, or maybe your client changes their mind or says like, "Oh, this looks really cool. I wish we like, I wish we would have positioned it differently." Like, "Oh, actually, I got it from that angle, from that side that you want." You know.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
especially with B-roll, more B-roll the better.
Oh yeah.
Because I've
Yeah.
had a few projects where literally because I spent that, I had I had the extra time to get the extra footage, and I did get the extra footage. The client ended up using it for the next project, and they were very thankful for that. Like, oh, that was a one-time event, and the extra footage you have, we can do a second edit. Like one once was for a highlight video of what happened at the event, and then the extra B-roll they used for the promo video of next year's event,
Mm.
for example. So more footage
Nice.
in my books is always better. There's overdoing it, obviously, and
Yeah.
that could be a problem with
Don't take the same
storage.
angle 10 times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Depending on what it is.
If you're
Yeah.
constantly filling up your cards with stuff you're not going to use, then I mean, if you have the money and the time to copy it and back it all up and sort through it, you do you, right? What about video editing, Nate? Give me a tip or a trick that you use for
Hmm.
editing.
Okay. For series of videos where I want a clip to look and sound the same as one from the previous week, for example, one thing I like to do is, I have both the sequences open. I will copy the clip from last week, and in the new sequence, I will highlight the clip that I want it to match, and I will paste just the attributes. So this is for Premiere Pro. Um, the hotkey for Windows is Control Alt V, or Command Option V, I guess would be for Mac. Or
Mm-hmm.
you can just right click, paste attributes, and then you can choose what type of attributes you want to paste. But basically, everything in the effects panel, any motion resizing you did,
Mm-hmm.
obviously color correction, sound effects, or that kind of stuff, uh, instead of having to copy and paste them one by one or copying an adjustment layer, sometimes that can clutter your layers. That's just something I like to do. And then I can copy and paste that from that new sequence to other clips there fairly quickly. That's something that I like to do. That, sometimes when I'm teaching a new video editor, that's something that they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. So that's one of my
So
little
wait,
tips.
did you say you just highlight the clip and copy it? Like
Yeah,
Control
so
C?
you control C, you copy like normal. But
Oh.
then when you're pasting, you just hold the modifier key, and then that pastes
Oh.
just the attributes.
Man. Okay, that's something I didn't even know. That's a good tip, Nate. I'll definitely use that because for audio especially, I would like go into the effects panel and like manually like shift click all of them or control click whichever it is. But the order in which you click them on is like the reverse order that they're gonna get pasted on. So like if I want my denoise first and then my second effect, I need that order properly. So
Hmm.
this sounds like is your tips a more hassle free way of doing that. Cool.
Yeah, bro. What do you got for
um,
me, Doran?
um, well, have you heard of Pancake Timelines?
No, I like waffle timelines better.
Oh, yeah. Waffle and chicken timelines.
Oh, that's good.
Wait, have you had waffle and chicken?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there a place in Vancouver that does it? Because
I
I
don't
had it in
know.
the States.
My wife made it for me, and I was like, "This is amazing."
I didn't like it.
Really? Huh.
It's like dessert with like meat. Like I don't know. I can't eat them the same. When I went to
Hmm.
LA, I ate waffle and pancakes because everyone was like, "Oh, this is famous here," and they had like a huge poster of Obama when he went there and ate there. Like, "Oh,
Hmm.
this is the place." And I
Yeah.
was just like, I can't, I don't want to feel both of these at the same time. I'm going to eat my chicken first, and then I'm going to have dessert with the
Mm,
waffle. I don't know. But
yeah.
anyway, coming back to pancake timelines. These are not
Well,
edible.
side
Uh,
note, that's me with like bacon and chocolate. Anything that's like bacon on a chocolate donut or like bacon flavored chocolate ice cream, all that kind of stuff. No, just give me just bacon and just ice cream. So I'm like that with you.
yeah.
You are with chicken, I'm with bacon.
Yeah, I'd probably be the same. Because, like, I know Red
Mm.
Robin's has a promotion that they put bacon in everything, including the milkshakes. I'm like,
Yeah,
shaking
no.
my head at your milkshake. No.
Yeah.
Um, I've actually not used Pancake Timeline, but I saw a video I think last year of someone explaining how to do it. But so basically in Premiere, instead of like putting your raw footage in one sequence, cutting highlights of it, um, like the juicy stuff, the stuff that you're actually going to use, you
Mm.
you'd copy it, then you'd go to your other timeline or sequence and paste it in there, and you'd like tab between them or like click between them. You can actually drag each sequence and make it its own window, and they can like layer like a pancake stack. You would need a lot of screen real estate to do this, but basically
Mm.
this will just speed up everything, and it will make it a bit, if you're more of a visual um organized person, like how your workflow is, then that works there. I kind of don't really do that because what I do is I kind of color label, like, let's
Hmm.
say from a B-roll, I'll pick a specific color, and I'm like, okay, this color means this is an outdoor shot. This color means it's an indoor shot. This color means there's people in the shot. This color means people are laughing. This is like, oh, use this at the end, you know?
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Lots of different colors.
Yeah. Or if I'm filming, multiple people doing like a meet the team type of video, then each color could represent a person, right?
Mm.
And that's just
Mhm.
easier for me. Like, ooh, I need one more B-roll clip to do a transition to this person, and I just look like for the color. Like, okay, how many more clips do I have with this one? Because maybe I filmed some in the beginning of the day and some at the end, right? So instead of like scrolling and looking through all of them, the color is just like, oh, red's right there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I use colors, but not to the same degree that you do.
Mm.
And I think my alternate for the pancake timeline is using bins in Premiere because
Mm.
with your project panel, you can have your different bins, but then I set it to the view where it's the thumbnail view, and that way, after you've added a clip to a sequence, it shows the little icon that it's been used. So, or the pancake timeline, it'd be nice if you drag that clip to your main one, and then you're dragging it out of that pancake sequence, so you know you're not using a duplicate clip. So it's nice because you can just like drag and drop. But my workaround for that is I just use bins, and then I can see which clips I've used and which clips have not been used yet. And I just set the
Hmm.
in and out points in the project panel, so I'm just dragging the part of the clip that I already want.
I see. Oh
So
yeah.
that's
Hmm.
just my different way of doing it.
Yeah. And isn't that wonderful about software? There's multiple ways to do something.
Yes, that is nice.
Mm-hmm. Um. Yeah. I don't know. For video editing, I can't think of any like tips and tricks that aren't like very obvious or basic. So I'm kind of like trying to think of like ones that
Um,
are like from the people that I know that are video editors that they don't typically clue in on using.
um, what I found sometimes is I use a gaming mouse.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't have too many extra buttons, just like a few on the side there, and that middle one is like a DPI switcher right there. And then the color changes. So if I want to use different sensitivities, oh, your autofocus works great. Mine wants to stick on my face.
Well,
Um,
yours worked good with the bottle you were showing earlier.
um, so a lot of gaming mice come with software you can program macros and shortcut keys,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be really handy for. For example, I'll select the back button on the side, and I'll program that to Control K for cut, so that as I'm dragging along and I want to cut a clip, I'll just like instead of holding Control and then K on the keyboard, which isn't the closest keybind or
Mm-hmm.
easiest hotkey. So I usually select the back to Control K, and then the more buttons you have, the more customizability you have, and that way that you can do a lot of things with just one hand instead of both hands, or you can keep that other hand free for JKL shuttling. Um, so that's
Mm-hmm.
another tip. If you're on a MacBook or something and you don't like the multi-touch touchpad, maybe try a gaming mouse, and that can be more precise, more physical, tactile clicking.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
can change your scroll speed a lot easier, and that can help. That's helped me edit faster than just with a two-button mouse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And actually, I just thought of another one because I saw someone comment on the freelancer Facebook group. And I've encountered this problem a few times. And when you're new, you might not know how to deal with it. So like Premiere deals with frames, not milliseconds. So sometimes lining up audio to match perfectly to the millisecond is like hard to do because you can scoot the thing like one frame forward or one frame back, which is
Mm-hmm.
depending on your project settings 1/24th of a second. But maybe you need something even more precise than that. Um, at that point, just take the two music or the two audio layers that you're having a hard time matching and use an audio editing and just import it as a separate audio track after you've like matched them to the millisecond. I've had to
Hmm.
do that a few times, especially with a multi-camera, identical two cameras, but for whatever reason, because you're pressing record on them at two different times, and for some reason the audio, if you try and match it to the frame, it sounds like robotic. It has that split-second delay,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's like a two-person interview and you don't want to constantly like mute one channel while the other one's talking, go and unmute the other one because that takes forever. If you just want to put them both on at the same time, yeah, go and do an audio edit to match the two.
Oh, okay. I
I
haven't
don't know
had
if
to
you've
do that so
encountered that.
far.
Yeah.
No, luckily mine have matched up close enough that it doesn't sound
Mm-hmm.
weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it's something short, I'll do the manual, like, okay, you're off while this guy's talking, so I don't hear you sniffing and coughing and adjusting your thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
But sometimes it's so interactive that, like, oh, just leave it.
yeah, yeah.
What about gear? Organizing your gear. Do you do anything special there?
Well, Doran, I always keep the lens cap on my camera, and I
While
always
filming?
keep the back cap when I'm organizing my gear, not when I'm
Okay.
filming, Doran. We went over those tips.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a tip. Take the lens cap off before you set your exposure. Yeah. You're at ISO 200,000. Why isn't it showing up?
I still can't see it.
you know, Put everything back in its spot. Don't leave anything loose. That way it won't
So you
get
have
jostled around.
do you have a dedicated like rack or drawer or storage backpack that you keep everything in? Like, does everything have its own place, or like, let's see where we can fit the camera in the backpack today?
No, I've just used the dividers in the backpack to keep everything in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and then if, like, for example, two lenses need to fit in the same one of them luckily has like a case that can go around it, so they're not going to scratch and rub against each other when I'm
Mm,
jostling around my backpack, running around. You know.
yeah,
Um,
you
so
always running and gunning.
yeah, run a gun. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't really have any hacks for packing other than have a spot for everything and
Mm-hmm.
keep it in that spot. What about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've learned that organizing, especially the more gear you get, the harder it is to remember. Like, where did I put this thing? I need it. I need it for tomorrow's filming, and it's like 10 p.m. and you want to go to sleep, and then you're like, I thought it was gonna take me 5 minutes to organize, um, but I can't find the microphone. So I've learned to organize stuff, and I have like drawers and dividers for everything. Like, this is the camera equipment drawer, this is the audio drawer, this is the external monitor drawer, this is the battery drawer. Um, but lately, it's gotten to the point where I kind of have these storage totes that I wheel like dolly in. Um, and I've had a few projects
Sorry,
where,
when you said wheel dolly, I just imagine like Gabby Gabby and like a little from Toy Story 4, that creepy doll who's
oh,
getting like pulled along in a wagon. You know, I pull my dolly.
yeah, yeah, something like that, yeah.
No, if
Because
you're
I've
talking about like
noticed,
those big Rubbermaid containers, that's like the
yeah,
tote, right?
storage totes,
Yeah.
and like I just stack them on a moving uh, hand truck dolly
Right.
that you would use to move
Vroom, vroom.
furniture.
Hand truck.
Like the Flintstones use their feet, but my truck, I use my hand. It's a hand truck.
Gotcha.
Because I've noticed in a few projects recently that if I had that extra cable or that extra microphone or that like more gear than I thought I would need, and I
Mm,
brought it with me, it's awesome. Because I like get to impress the client with how prepared I am. I'm like, oh, I just didn't want to take everything out of the box, so I just brought the whole box with me with all the cables. Because that's easier for me at this point because of all the stuff that I have in the storage box.
mm.
But it's like, oh, do you have a second microphone? Like, I actually do. This was not part of the original agreement, but guess what? I do have it.
Nice. So it can save your butt sometimes, help you
Mm-hmm.
react in the moment. The only downside is you're lugging everything that you potentially might only use like a quarter of.
Yeah. So yeah. So unless it's a very small project where I know I just need the tripod and camera and lav mic and that's it, then I'll just bring that. But if it's like if a client, like for example, if I don't need a teleprompter, but I'm not too sure if the client's gonna be able to
Mm,
deliver the lines, it's better to have the teleprompter with you. And if they're like, "Oh man, we have to reschedule another day," like, no, how about you take your script and email it to me, and I'll put in the teleprompter in 10 minutes.
boom. Yep.
Yeah.
It's good to bring for sure.
What about organizing footage? I remember working together. You would be the go-to organizer guy for that.
Oh, yes. I actually really enjoy copying and organizing footage in folders and on servers and stuff like that. I really enjoy that.
Hmm.
I know not everybody does, so it's you know, nice little treat for me sometimes. Like
So
when we would.
give us an example, a tip of how would you best manage? You just are got done filming something for the day. You're about to copy, dump the cards, as we say. What does that look like? What's the best way to do it, Nate?
Well, it can depend on your workflow, but the way I like to do it is actually rename the clips while they're on the card with, whatever I just filmed and the date, and then like an index at the end. So like Windows and Mac will automatically add that at the end for you. Um, so you then it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So you don't have to worry about renaming each clip its own individual number at the end. So both operating systems will do that for you. But for example, I would do like Dorin BTS Mod Ridge 0604 2021, and then the index would add automatically when I'm renaming all of them. And so I'll rename them all so that they're an individual file name so that they cannot get confused for any other clip on my SSD or my backup. Then I will copy it all to my working drive. And if my card has enough space, I will actually keep those clips. I'll just drag them into like a backup folder and then just have a copy living on the SD card until I actually need that space.
Oh.
So if I have a 128 gig card, but I just only film like 3 to 5 gigs of stuff,
Mhm.
I'll just keep it on the card as an extra backup because you never know. You know, if my house gets flooded or something, my
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
drive gets thrown out the window. I don't know what
Those
my kids are gonna
those
do.
yeah, those kids. So
Um,
you're not one of those like, okay, I copied it format.
no, that's a bad idea.
Mm,
Yeah,
I remember doing that at our previous workplace.
yep. Although our
But
server, I
that
think,
was
got backed up fairly often, like
yeah, but actually
nightly
now
or
I'm
weekly.
recalling we did that because the camera would sometimes have an issue formatting it.
Yeah, yeah. So we would format it so that the camera would function properly, but with like those are with big CF cards and
Yeah,
a
that's true.
specific camcorder. With SD cards, I haven't had an issue with that. So
Yeah,
no, I
me
hardly
neither.
ever format a card.
Yeah. I do leave stuff on the SD card. I don't go through naming all the stuff. Like I'll properly name and do a huge hierarchy of folders. Like okay, each folder has their camera number and maybe even the shot. Like okay, camera one, wide shot, groom or something, and they'll be in a project folder that's part of the client name folder. And also, the project folder should have a date because I've had clients that are like, remember that recording we did in May? And I'm like, my folder's just called your company name, and now we have a second shoot, so I need to put names. But if you do
Yeah.
that after the edit, you screw over your linking. You have to relink media.
Yep. And you don't want to trust necessarily that date on the clip itself because it
Oh
might
yeah.
change that. Your camera might have had the wrong time and date. So yeah, you want to
hmm
rely reliably name that so you can look it up for sure.
hmm Um, one thing I do with gear also is batteries. I have all my AA batteries in a little soft case with like foam inserts, like foam cutouts. I mean, to insert the batteries. So like after everything's charged, I put them with like the positive side up, and if I just changed out a battery on the shoot, I'll like take the fresh ones and the used ones. I'll put them upside down, so with the negative up, so that I know to not take them by accident if I have a shoot the next day and I didn't have a chance to charge.
Right. And you're talking rechargeable double A's because regular double A's, they're just
Right,
done. Yeah.
rechargeable. Correct. Thank you. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Um, and I know a couple of people, a couple of videographers do that with SD cards. Like they'll keep the footage on there, and if they didn't get a chance to copy it and back it up, and next day they already have another shoot, or it's the same client, it's just day two, they'll put the SD card wherever the storage thing they put a little case or a little pouch. They'll put that like with the text facing away. So usually you put it so that
Hmm.
you can read like, okay, I need two 128s, not the 264s. Yeah, if it's like flipped and you can't read it, like, okay, that one hasn't been copied yet, don't touch it.
Yeah. That's really handy for those like clamshell cases that open up like that. And then yeah, the foam inserts so you can just wedge
Mm-hmm.
them in there and they won't go anywhere. Yeah, I haven't really had to deal with giant multicam, multi-card shoots, so I don't really have to
Mm-hmm.
do that. But other places I've worked for, that's been a common practice. So definitely a good tip.
Yeah, I haven't had to deal with that either. Um, what I do, and I do not recommend this as a tip, this is just something that I do.
Oh, I'm not gonna listen then.
Yeah, is I like after I copy the footage, I'll leave the SD card on my desktop, and if I have enough SD cards in my storage pouch thing, then I'll just use those. And when I see the pouch getting low, that's when I'm like, okay, time to format everything on that's on my desk and put it back in the pouch.
Okay,
But
so it's like a rotation kind of a thing.
yeah, but what if one of my SD cards fails or falls in whatever I can't access it, or I don't know, you know? It's not the best way. It's just how I'm doing it, but I will admit it's not the best way.
Mm. It doesn't quite match up with your bring everything mantra.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not
Exactly.
bringing all your cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, just leave them on the disc.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it just feels good.
Feels good.
When you do it, and then when you're out shooting, you're like, man, these cards better work today.
Please.
Oh man. Um, sorry, I'm just reading the doc to see where we're at. Um, I don't know. I think that's it for me for organizing gear. Um, you got anything else, or what do you want to talk about next?
Why don't we talk a little bit about more about audio? We're
Sure.
recording audio
Yeah,
there,
you're
Doran.
better at audio than me. Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm better at
Oh, you
audio.
meant recording. I meant editing audio. You're the audition guy, but recording
Mm.
audio. You know what? Again, coming back to the thing where I bring like if I know I need the one mic, I bring a second one as a backup. Oh yeah, and I guess that's a general tip that a lot of videographers say, but a lot of them don't do it, especially for budget reasons. Have a backup for everything.
Oh
Like
yeah.
if you have one mirrorless camera, they suggest buy a second one and bring it with you in case your first one breaks. And I guess it's one of those things like until it happens to you, you're like, I'm not gonna do it until you get screwed over once. Um, because your gear failed. Um, but I kind of had that with microphones. I didn't have a microphone fail on me. I just had the client like not realize that like, oh, this other thing that we need to capture is all the way there and it's we're here and it's not gonna sound good. And I'm just like, I'll take this Zoom H1 right here and I'll just place it next to that and I'll put it in post and it's gonna work. It doesn't have to record straight onto camera. I can do magic in editing. Like, ooh. So
Yeah, syncing by waveform or
yeah.
audio, super handy. Yeah,
Yeah.
remember when you
And
used to have like a third-party plugin for that?
we're synchronizing audio.
Yeah, clips
I
and
don't think
audio.
I don't think I've ever used a third party to do that.
Oh,
Like yeah, you're talking about not a multicam where I can use video to synchronize, but different audio clips, right?
yeah, or audio and a video
I
with
I would
scratch.
I would always do it manually.
Uh, well, back in the day, you could pay a fee and have that functionality, and it would like spit out an XML sequence that you could then import with the audio and stuff
Oh,
synced. Yeah, I forget what it was called now. Multi something, something to do with eyes. Anyways, and then Premiere built it in natively, so you don't need that anymore.
oh, that's cool.
But but yeah, now like recording different audio sources of the same thing, it's like such a breeze to sync now. So that's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And Doran, before you tell any more stories, um, there was once a shoot for a company that I worked for where I was not present, and they had three different cameras, and the idea was to have an audio source for each. You know, it's always good to have a backup. So they'd have a shotgun microphone, a little handheld Zoom microphone, and then like the audio source from the main audio board. It was like at an event in a gym hooked up to the camera. And they were
Mm-hmm.
rushed. You know, everything was running late. So things weren't checked properly. And even the backup audio, the battery ran out and nobody checked it. So all they had was the crappy scratch audio from a camera that was like 30 feet away from everything happening. And you could barely even understand it. So this company had to try and
Wow.
listen to what the announcer was saying, and they actually re-recorded it with their own voices so that you could even hear what was happening on stage. And it was a painstaking process. So they learned the hard way there. Always check your backups too, for audio especially.
Hmm.
Because, you know,
Wow.
video, you can see visually what's happening, but you might not be listening closely to see if the audio is correct. So that was
Mm-hmm.
a mistake that they definitely paid the price for.
Wow. And if you don't
So,
mind me asking, why were you not able to be present, or like were you
they,
supposed to be there, or is it
no,
just a
they were
client
just,
that it's like, well, we'll manage and maybe you'll do the edit?
it was a scheduling thing where I had already had 40 hours of work set for that week, but it was such a busy week. They had to have other teams going to different places at the same time. So, yeah, I just didn't get scheduled for that shoot. So, maybe if
Mm.
I was there, I would have caught it. But yeah, it's something that's really critical is having a backup audio and checking it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I hope I never run into that situation because that sounds like a nightmare.
Yep, it was.
Um, Weddings are interesting for recording audio. So, a few tips I would suggest there is, let's say the groom doesn't want to have a lav mic on him because it shows up in the pictures or whatever. You can try and put the lav on the officiant, but I had once where they said, okay, you may now kiss the bride, and then they walked off, which was amazing. Usually they just stand there and look at them, and they show up in the video awkwardly because it's like the couple, but then you see the officiant behind there, like, yeah, kiss her, go. And they show
Yeah.
up in the pictures, but a few really mindful professionals would step out. Problem is, this person stepped out, and the audio followed with them, and they were mumbling stuff like, "Oh, they're so adorable together," or something like that. And I'm like, "Well, gotta cut out the audio and put the music back up."
Uh,
And it's a shame because people were cheering on, but you could still hear
mm.
the officiant going like, "Oh, bless their souls!" Like, no, I don't want to hear that. Get fake cheering off of the internet, overlay it.
You didn't just cheer yourself in your room and like or outside and
No,
overlay
yeah,
it.
try and do different pitch and but what I've started doing now is I have a couple of extra like Zoom H1s that I will strategically place and hide. Like let's say if they have I'll try and hide it in the decorations. Like if they have a huge archway that
Mm.
where they're the the ceremony's happening at, I'll like hide it in between the flowers there, make sure that it's not visible to my camera. If other people see it, I don't care. Obviously, I'll double check with the bride and groom, like, hey, is it okay if I hide this here? There's this little black fluffy thing that's poking out of these roses, but it's not going to show up in the video. They're like, yeah, that's fine. And yeah, a couple of times I've used that instead of a lav, and it worked out pretty good because I knew exact placements. Like, okay, this is going to happen here. There's going to be someone playing the piano all the way there. Like, okay, put a microphone there instead of like getting it with a shotgun from like 50 feet away.
Hmm.
So yeah, having extra mics and strategically placing them so that they're not in the shot, but you're as close as possible to the action. That is something that I've definitely picked up and love doing.
That's awesome. And as long as you don't forget to take them at the end, if you have to quickly move on to
Yeah,
reception or something, you got to make sure you remember to grab them from the flowers.
true. Yeah, I don't do that many weddings, maybe 3 or 4 a year, but yeah, especially with COVID now, things are just so quick. Like the 2 weddings I had this year were like half hour.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. Pays way less, but it still pays. So yeah, for a half hour, I'll come and look at you do your vows and film you and charge you for it. Business
Nice.
is business.
And Dorin, the
But
business man.
yeah. But in a non-wedding scenario, like an interview scenario, here's another tip. Um, when you're placing the mic on him and you're about to start filming, and you're like, okay, good, the batteries is working, mic's on, let's do an audio check. And I just ask him like, what do you have for breakfast, or how was the drive here, or something, and they'll like respond in their normal talking voice. And I'll maybe try and say a joke to make them laugh. But if I'm not able to do that, let's say their response to me, I've put the level at -6. When they start presenting, they go way louder. They go into their performance voice because
Mm.
they think they're in front of 1,000 people on stage, or they crack a joke and they start laughing because it's part of their spiel, and that's way louder than normal talking. And guess what? I have like peaking
Oh, yeah.
clipping audio. So then I've learned the hard way. Like, okay, when I do an audio test, let's bring it at least 6 dB down. I'd rather like raise it in post and noise reduce than have something unrecoverable.
Yep. Definitely a good tip. Yeah, whenever you try and get someone to read a sample or whatever, they're never as loud as they actually are when you're filming.
Yeah.
It's very true. It's a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah. Another something I usually use if there's like a monotonous or droning noise or like a more consistent background noise. I'll always capture a sample noise print.
Yeah.
So, for 5 or 10 seconds, I just get everybody to be dead quiet, but everything else is the same so
Hmm.
that I can just get the background noise. And then that's easier to isolate in post in Adobe Audition or whatever. You can just like highlight that region of the audio and capture noise print and then apply that noise reduction to everything instead of trying to find a pause where they might be taking a breath or something like that after the fact.
Which is
If
what I
you're
do.
it's a lot easier to just be able to select a bigger chunk of something you did intentionally for noise
100%.
reduction.
That's cool. Yeah. That's really good to do. I've become lazy with that. I used to hunt for like I need a 3-second pause where they're not scratching or making other un un like it's noise, but it's not the background noise. I don't want
Mm,
any active noise on
mm,
background noise. And sometimes you don't find it, and then I had to resort to like, okay, well, let's just see what Premiere can do by itself. And Premiere's come a long way with their automatic filters, noise removal. So I've just become lazy and I just use that because it always seems to work good and it doesn't give
mm,
the kind of the glitchy artifact kind of sound, if you know what I mean.
mm-hmm.
Where the noise is gone, but part of their voice is gone too, and you can tell something's wrong. That's how it used to be back in the old days, like 5, 6 years ago. Um, Probably both of those technologies have improved now, and I can probably confidently do that. But the convenience of an automatic filter that I think, yeah, Premiere's is called adaptive noise reduction.
Okay.
So I don't even need to set a level for it.
Hmm.
Like for the noise floor, it just auto detects.
Adaptive noise reduction.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I've just your method's the more professional one. I'm using the shortcut.
In a pinch, that can work great, like you
Mm-hmm.
say. Any other audio tricks there, Doran?
Um. Oh yeah. I use a built-in plugin, part of default Premiere called Hard Limiter. It's like a sort of a compressor. Basically, like let's say you have someone that's like talking at a certain level, like let's say negative 18 dB, and then when they crack the joke or get really passionate about making their point, then they get really loud, like negative 6 dB or whatever. Um, with hard limiter, you just set, okay, I don't want it to be louder than negative 6, but I want to boost everything by 12 dB. So I want to keep everything around negative 6, negative 8. So it'll do that for you. It'll set a ceiling and you can raise your floor, and it's just a more consistent experience. I actually use that for music, which I
Hmm.
don't think a lot of people do. Like, let's say you have a voiceover and you want to duck down the music so it's not as loud as your voiceover. If the music's intense and then it naturally mellows out, because you've ducked it down, you're not even going to hear the mellowed out part. So I'll
Mm,
like use a hard limiter on music instead of like ducking music down 12 dB. I'll just set the max, the ceiling to negative whatever I want it, and everything else can stay where it is. Or if it
Gotcha.
needs to be raised, I raise it. And that has
Hmm.
made product video sound so much better because the music's like
Mm,
at a constant level.
yeah, which if you're trying to mix it with audio and stuff, then that's ideal. If you're just listening to music, then obviously you might want some dynamics just on
Mm-hmm.
its own. But in this context, that consistency is what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Very
because
nice.
it's weird. I'm not a very audio technical person, but basically there's a difference between decibel levels and projection power. So like you can have two different types of sounds be the same noise or volume, the same decibels, but one is going to sound way louder than the other one to the human ear because of whatever projection and how we pick up sound.
We got to get an audio expert on this podcast, Dorin, to school us on this.
Yeah, we gotta we gotta diversify. We gotta get a photographer. We gotta get a sound mixer person. Um, yeah, we'll do that, Nate. I'll find someone,
All
and
right,
you
I'll
look for
find.
someone. Yeah,
All right, together we will find someone to tell
we'll
us.
make this podcast continue.
Yes. Okay. Anything else with audio, Doran?
None that I can think of now.
Okay. One tip that just popped into my mind when you're shooting is use your waveform monitor. So that's more for like exposure, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it is better than zebra levels, which is another common feature in a camera for monitoring. You know, you can set your zebra to show up at 70 or 90% or whatever, but that only tells you which parts of your image are getting too bright. It doesn't actually tell you which parts, like where the blacks might be getting crushed. So using the waveform
Mm.
monitor, you can tell the entire picture of your scene's exposure, not just the limits. And so that way you can aim for maybe say 70% luminosity on skin tones, which is usually a sweet spot for a lot of cameras, for a lot of skin tones. And it's available on a lot of video cameras or external monitors if you use those, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be old news to more seasoned videographers, but instead of just relying on your screen, which might have different brightness, or just saying, oh, that looks okay, you know,
Yeah.
you really want to nail the exposure so that you have the most flexibility in post and it looks the best out of the camera.
I don't
Uh,
know if you've had this problem with the A7 III. I've had this screw me over once. I wasn't using an external monitor, and it was an outdoor shoot, and the LCD looked properly exposed to me, and I didn't use a zebra and I didn't use anything because I'm like, yeah, I'll eyeball it. Everything was overexposed.
yes, I have had that actually.
I
Definitely.
don't know why, and it was so bizarre because I was reviewing clips with my client. Like after filming, he'd be like, "All right, how did that look?" And I'd show him on camera, and he's like, "Oh, that looks great." And then when I sent him the footage, he's like, "It's a tad too bright. Can you bring it down?" I'm like, "Actually, I tried, but no." And we were both like, "But I saw it on the camera." I'm like, "It's." So I had to like tell him like, "I just got this camera. This is stupid. I didn't know this is an issue with it. I'm sorry." And I offered him a reshoot for free
Mm,
to salvage the project. And they were very
yeah,
happy about it. And they actually stayed as a repeat client.
that's good.
Um, Actually, I'm gonna have something with them next month, so that's good. Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh,
wow.
proving it. I'm not just saying repeat. We got something in the works.
Wow. Next month. It must be legit.
Oh,
Yeah, I've definitely had that where I looked at just the LCD and it looked properly exposed, but then watching it back on the computer, I'm like, oh, that's brighter than I expected. So,
yeah, yeah. Because
yeah.
your other fear is like, oh, it looks too dark. Um, and I just thought of another audio editing. Tell me if you do this. Let's say you have multiple takes of someone delivering a line, and you have to splice like half of version 1 with half of version 5.
Mm-hmm.
But their tone kind of sounds different or there's something a bit off. So, like, instead of cutting right where the problem was, I try and find the overlap um, on, what's the word in English? Semblance? Semblance? Like when you make a sound.
Oh, sibilance. Yeah,
Sibilance. Okay, thank you.
that's sound. Yeah.
Yeah. So if the word was fast, I'll cut the first clip to where he says fast, and then from this other take where he finishes and the S, that sound makes it for a perfect transition point every time.
Oh, interesting. I've never done that before.
You have to apply a 1 frame audio fade, otherwise it's gonna sound like a sharp, like it's a, and the other one's like it sounds different. Yeah, it's
Fast.
exactly like that is gonna sound.
Okay.
But if you do a like a 1 or 2 frame audio fade,
Mm-hmm.
flawless.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I've had to do that multiple times. I usually try and get the client if they like messed up something. I'm like, okay, redo the sentence before that sentence too.
Mm. Yeah, give them a bit of lead in time.
Mm-hmm. Because that'll help them get back in the tone. Because if they
Mm-hmm.
redo right from the word that they messed up, they'll do it different. Because maybe they just
Yeah.
laughed about it and then like
Yeah.
they're
Right.
still smiling and like it doesn't
Yeah.
work as a cut. So that's a huge audio one that I just like thought of myself when
Mm.
trying to like desperately salvage something, and I noticed like, oh, on the sound it's so easy to just like fade
Ah,
like mid word.
yeah. So the more S sounds in the script, the easier it is to edit multiple takes together.
If I had to, yes. Audio wise, yes. And assuming you had 2 camera angles, you could bounce around between them if they're not too often doing the cuts. Like if a cut's happening every 10 seconds, it might be a bit too often.
Mm,
But
gotcha.
depending on the
Hmm,
type of video.
okay. I'll have to try
Whew.
that next time. I need to combine multiple takes like that.
Mm-hmm. Same thing with music, actually. If the client's like, ooh, I love this track, like I send them, here's audio blocks. I use audio blocks. Here's find the music that you like from here and I'll edit it. And our clip is our highlight video is 1 minute, but they pick a 3 minute song and they're like, I love the beginning and the end of it. I don't like the middle part or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then I'll find where I'll try and match it to the beat if the instruments don't sound vastly different. But if I'm combining what's the instrument when you do a crash
Symbol?
cymbal when you do a cymbal crash um to like mellow out and then they do it again to shoot back up in intensity in
Yeah.
the song. I try and match those because those are like again it's that
Mhm.
sound and it just like works.
I'm just imagining they have like a piano ballad and it's like la di da di da, and then Doran adds a cymbal crash to blend them together. La di da di da,
No,
da
I
di
don't
da.
add it if it's there.
I know, but like, it's just works for songs that have cymbal crashes. It's just be funny if you like use that as a transition
Oh,
point
that's just an
for everything.
example. If you find a sound that sounds good when you fade it like 1 frame into 2 clips, like a beat doesn't really work that way, but a kind of like a louder snare could work too.
Hmm. Definitely.
Um, but and if that doesn't happen, then I would have to match tempo of the melody, which is again at that point you can't adjust by frames, you have to adjust by milliseconds, so might as well take it in Audacity or Audition or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good extra tip there. Well, those are all the
Eh,
tips I can think of right now.
that's a lot of tips. I think that's good. We'll leave it there. And to mess with everyone's brain at the end here, let's keep up the metaphor of the day. Today's Malfour, or this week's Malfour, is sticks and rolling stones may break my bones, but words cannot gather moss.
Oh boy. We're gonna
Can
have
you
to do like
identify the two that I've mixed there, Nate?
yeah, for the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me, and a rolling stone gathers no moss.
There you go, Nate. Yeah.
Soon we're gonna have to do Romanian Malaforce, and then it's really gonna go over my head.
Oh, dude, I completely forgot that I'm Romanian. I gotta think of Romanian ones and troll my Romanian friends. Holy cow, you're right, Nate.
There you
Oh,
go.
Romanian stuff is already so like weird and metaphorical. Yeah. Oh man, I'm not gonna be able to sleep now. I have to think of Romanian Malforce. Nate, no.
uh, yeah,
Anyway, the train's making noise, so it's time for me to wrap up the podcast.
yeah, gotta hitchhike on the train.
Yeah. So thank you very much for watching and listening to today's podcast. Hopefully, some of these tips and tricks are relevant and useful for your type of projects that you're working on. Please leave a comment or send us a message about tips and tricks that you use in your projects and maybe future topics that you want us to talk about and future guest types that you want us to invite. We've already mentioned like we want to get a photographer. We already had a marketing person. That was Victor. Episode
Hmm. I don't know, 5?
5.
Yeah, I think 5.
So sounds about right. We got to get a photographer and a sound person. Maybe even a movie director or like an indie film director.
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, thank you very much for listening.
yeah. Be sure to subscribe to not miss an episode of the Nate and Doran podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever you use to listen to podcasts. This has been Nate and Doran. Thank you for watching and listening.